Hello, I am Francesco Mazza from XINZUO, and today I will explain to you how to a very basic training on how to sharpen a knife using a whetstone. It happens to all of us to be at home. We bought an amazing knife, but after a while it stops being sharp. And sharpening it with a whetstone, as long as you have a very good whetstone, is very easy. It only takes very few minutes. Now I will use one of our whetstones from XINZUO, but of course you can use many other whetstones, as long as they're being made in corundum, which is a very special material that is perfect for sharpening stones. So this is our basic package. We sell it with, very well sealed. We sell the base as well, which is very useful to avoid it from falling or moving when you're working with the stone. This is the stone. This one I'm using for this example is a 1000 and 5000 grit size. Let me just get rid of this thing. Otherwise I will never be able to open it. So the first step we do when we sharpen with a whetstone is we have to put this in water. So let me take away these things for a while. This is the non-slip base we have. Now we give also these two items which are very useful. This is made to make sure that the sharpening angle is correct. So, because the biggest mistake someone can make when they're sharpening a knife is to get the angle wrong. That's the only way you can actually damage or at least cancel what you have been doing. The purpose of this item is you put the blade inside like this, and when you sharpen, this will keep the right angle of 15 degrees. The first step we have to do for the whetstones in corundum, they're called whetstones because they should be wet. So what we do is we put it in water. Hold on a minute. Good. Yeah, maybe. I don't know if you can see, but the stone is making bubbles in the water. And this is because the water is going inside the stone. So the water is very important because it helps to keep the surface of contact between the steel and the whetstone wet. And this is very important so the temperature of the steel does not rise too much. So we will have to wait probably 3 or 4 minutes before the stone stops making bubbles. As soon as it stops making bubbles, then it's ready to use. In the meantime, we will prepare our work table. And I will use this time to explain to you the purpose of this other tool. This is a flattening tool that is important because after much use of the whetstone will start developing some small valleys, let's say. And the whetstone and the flattening tool is necessary so you can make the whetstone flat again. As you can see, the stone is still making bubbles, so we still need to wait a little while. It is ready when it stops making bubbles. Okay, so now our whetstone stopped making bubbles and it's ready to use. But first of all, I would like to show you another thing. Talking about the flattening tool, how and when do you know that you need to do some flattening? It's fairly easy. You take a used whetstone like this one, and with the use of a pencil, you draw some some lines on it, some checkers. And then what you do, you take the flattening tool and you just scratch it back and forth. You need some water. And you see that, for example, in this stone, only some parts have become grinded and others have not. This means that the stone is not exactly flat. So this stone requires more grinding like this until the lines go away. And then you know you made like a flat stone. In this case, we are using a new stone, so of course there's no need to flatten it again. Usually you need to flatten the whetstone on average, I would say about once every 4 or 5 times you use the stone. So different stones have different grit size. As we said, this one is 1000 and 5000. If you have a knife that's not extremely dull, you can usually start with 1000 grit size and then go up. I generally start from either 1000 or 800 and then use a 3000, 5000 and 10,000 if I want to make a perfect edge. In our case, we will work with one of our German steel knives. German steel is a good steel. It is a bit hard to sharpen, so it takes a little bit more time than more advanced steels. But like, let's see how sharp this knife is. My hand is, it's quite okay. It is a bit sharp, but not very much. So what I will do, since our task here is to learn how to sharpen the knife, I have to make this knife more dull. And I will do that by using the whetstone like this. This way, the knife edge will go away. When we sharpen a knife, we have to pay a lot of attention to our ears, because it's most of all our ears who will tell us if the knife is sharp or not. Let's see how did my damaging work proceed. Let's take. Yeah, you see, it's not sharp now. It cannot cut through the paper. Now, at first I will teach you to sharpen using this tool, which makes it very, very simple. When you will be more skilled, everybody recommends not to use the tool, but to learn making the right angle with your hands. But as a starter, this is a very, very good tool. So we put this inside the blade. It's very simple. And then starting with the 1000, what we do is we do this movement here. What's very important is that with the same movement, we start from the tip and we get to the heel of the blade. So we do like this. This tool helps us keep the perfectly good angle. We will need to do it quite a few times, maybe about 20 times, let's say. You have to do it both on one side and the other one. Always make sure that the stone is wet. It has to be very wet, because otherwise, as we said before, the temperature of the steel during the sharpening gets very high. Now, someone would say, why? How can this get very high? The logic is the same logic as when you burn a needle with the lighter. Of course, a needle is steel, so it should get very hot only at very, very high temperatures. But only with a simple lighter, we can almost immediately make the tip become very red. How is that? That's because when you get to the tip of the needle, the part of the needle is very, very thin. So it doesn't need very much heat to reach a high temperature. And this is the same logic we have here. Let's say I did more or less 20 passes. Again, very important is to start from one side, start from the tip and get to the heel. The small sound you hear, it's because of this. But doing this, after a while, you will hear that the sound that the blade makes becomes like softer. In the beginning, it's very, you can really feel the scratching from the sound. But after a while, the sound becomes very little, like you see now, you hear now. The sound becomes softer and softer, and it means that the edge is starting to get created. Once the edge is fully created with this grit size, you will hear very, very little sound. So always try to start from the tip and do the heel. You hear now the sound is very, very small. You do also this side is also very. And then once we sharpen, we need to check that the blade, the blade edge is straight. Because sometimes if you over sharpen one side, it will start to slowly bend on that one. So we have to be careful to try to do more or less the same number of passes on one side and on the other one. Okay. Now it is starting to get better. Let's try with a little piece of paper. Still no. A little better, but still needs a lot of work. You should always try to keep the, when you use the stone, it will develop some sort of powder on it, and you should always try to keep it away. You don't need the powder. The powder makes it sharpen slightly faster, but it does not create a very precise edge. So it's not very good to keep it there. You can leave it there in the beginning if you want to speed the process a little bit, but in general, it should not be there. If you can, I don't know if you can see, but the edge is starting to being created. You can see there is some slight change here. You can start to see it has started to create the edge. But I really destroyed all the edge before, so obviously now we have to do the work to create again. Let's see how's it going. Slightly better. No, not very good yet. Another technique you can use is to start from the tip and go gradually to the heel and do this movement. And then you can do this to do the majority of the work and then do the complete ones to make sure that the edge is very constant. Because this way you obviously have more speed and more fast progress. But this is very good because it makes a very continuous edge. Makes sure there's no difference between one point and the other. So let's do the same here. We start from the heel and only go to the tip. And we go to the heel. Let me get rid of a bit of this. The blade looks better. We get a new piece of paper. Yes. It starts to create the edge. But this is still a very, very rough edge because it's a 1000 grit. Now we can start moving to the next one, to the other one, which is the 5000. Let's get some water in. 5000 is a much finer grit, so it requires a little bit of more work. This is already as sharp as most of high-end knives, but of course you need to go a little bit higher. Let's start with the same technique as before. We start from one side of the knife and then we go back to the other one. As you can see, this stone makes a much softer or homogeneous sound than the other one because the grit size is more small. This side makes a little different sound compared to the other one, so I will grind it a little bit more. Yeah, it's getting much better now. Let's give it a try. Much better. Let's see now. Yeah, starting to get quite sharp. Starting. We're almost finished. It always depends, of course, how sharp you want your knives. Some people need very, very sharp knives. Other people, they need slightly duller ones, especially if they need to have the knife maybe get in touch with bones, or might be in a drawer where there are other steel items. And then you don't want a very, very thin blade, because if you have a very, very thin blade edge, if you have a very thin blade edge, then any contact with steel or other bones, it will damage the blade. So you want to have the right type of sharpness according to the type of work that you plan to do with the knife. This part is always making a lot of noise. Let's grind it down. Yeah. Oh, if you don't have if you don't have this tool, sometimes it's also a good solution to flatten the stone using another stone. You just do basically this, and you obtain the same result of flattening the stone. Yes. Now the sound it makes is very different from when we started. It makes a much, much softer sound. So it means that the stone is doing its work, but it does not encounter any more significant grains on the blade. The sound is very smooth now. Yeah. So now let's just clean the blade. Yeah. And let's see how it goes. It's good. It's very good. Okay, this concludes our basic whetstone training. Thank you very much, and see you at the next video. Bye-bye.